Welcome to the show, ladies and gentlemen. Tonight's guest we have Wadab Shakur. Brother just come home from doing a long period of time in prison, I think 30 years in prison. And we want to welcome him home and allow him to come on the show and tell you who he is. Welcome to the show, my brother.
Welcome. Thank you very much.
Right. Now, did I pronounce your name right?
Absolutely. Wadai Amani Shakur.
Okay, Wadai
Yes.
Amani Shakur.
Yes.
Okay, welcome home, my brother.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much.
Right on, right on. Now, how long did you do in prison? How much time did you do
I
in
did
prison?
29 years and 9 months.
29 years, 9 months.
Yes, sir.
You did 30 years in prison.
30 years. Rounded off to 30 years.
30 years in prison.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, you what county were you sitting from?
I was sentenced from Los Angeles County,
Los Angeles County.
but I went to Torrance Municipal, and I was bound over to Torrance Superior Court.
Okay.
And came through the LA County jail system.
Okay. What crime did you go to prison for?
I was at a 187, 211, and it was the murder of Officer George Aguilar.
Okay. You served your time.
Served
You
my
did your time. Okay. You went into the system. I take it as a young man.
Went in the system at 20. I'm
20
50
years old.
years today.
Okay. Well, at 20, you're going through things. You haven't
Yes.
figured it out yet.
No, not at all.
So that's why the crime happened. You went trying to figure it out. And you
Absolutely.
went into a system where you had to go into a system and grew up real fast.
Real fast.
At the time you went to prison, it was rock and
Real
roll.
fast.
Right,
It was rock and roll.
Yeah. So what reception center did you go into?
Tehachapi. I came through Tehachapi Reception Center.
Okay. And they send you from there where?
To there, they sent me to Tehachapi 4 yard.
Okay.
On the B yard, it was rocking, because at that time, 1988, that's when they opened the SHU program, and they let all the hardcore prisoners out at the time to these
The
level
main line.
4s, to the main line.
Right.
So that's where I dropped at.
Okay. So how much time did you do in Tehachapi?
7 years.
7 years. And then from there, where did you
I
go?
went to Lancaster State Prison,
With Lancaster,
which is my backyard,
Okay.
of course. So it was a welcome home party,
Right.
meaning all the homeboys from the hood was there.
Right.
Like the whole neighborhood was locked up again.
Right.
And I
All
was
over
familiar with everybody. I knew everybody.
So it was just like a big party. Actually.
Just like a big party.
Right.
And coincidentally, that's how the prison is designed,
Right.
to keep you comfortable. Everybody that you know from the block, everybody that you know from your childhood friend. If you're from the inner city, of course, where I'm from,
Right.
you are at home.
Right.
You are placed in a place where you know everybody.
Right. They keep you in that little cesspool. So
Same situation.
Right. So how long did you do that?
I did another 7 years
7 years.
at Lancaster.
Okay. So you did 7 years at Lancaster. You did 7 years at Tehachapi.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now let me ask you a question.
Yes, sir.
And during your time, you've seen a lot of things from the 7 to the 7.
Yes.
Okay. Hung around the homies.
Mm-hmm.
With the homies.
Mm-hmm.
At what time in your life did the light come on that you had to do something different?
If I had to do something
That
different,
you had to do something different.
well, my light came on. My light came on after I left Lancaster.
Okay.
Leaving Lancaster was what you call an adverse transfer.
Mm-hmm.
Adverse transfer meaning you have no control over that.
Mm-hmm.
You were just put on the bus because the administration believed that we are to break. There's too much blacks,
Right.
too much Mexicans,
Right.
too much white.
Right.
So we got to break this yard up
Right.
to get the violence under control.
Mhm.
So I was transferred to CSP Solano,
Okay.
level 3.
Okay.
My points had just dropped coincidentally. My points dropped in the process of transferring. So instead of going to a 4, they moved me to a level 3,
Okay.
CSP Solano. So when I got to CSP Solano in 2000, that's when the process started.
Okay. You start programming.
Start programming.
Right.
Because CSP Solano was more conducive. It was more turned down. Wasn't turned up at that time. It's
Right.
turned up now.
Right.
Level 3 is turned up. It's back up again.
Right.
But at that time, it was a lot of program coming online,
Right.
and a lot of people was there. The Muslim community. By the way, I took my shahada in prison in 1992 in Tehachapi.
Okay.
So I became Islam, a Muslim who followed the principle and the teaching of the Prophet
Okay.
Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and the guidance of the Holy Quran.
Right.
So I had a little dictation in my life.
Okay.
However, I was straddling the fence.
Right. You had some structure in your life.
I had some structure.
Right. Okay.
But however, I was straddling the fence.
Right.
Because that's what we do early on
Right.
when we are first coming in.
Right.
Yes.
Now you you left from one and you went to another. Like you said, you were straddling the fence. When you got to Solano, you saw that because at one time during your time, was nobody going home.
Nobody was going on.
On the Pete Wilson Great Day,
On the
wasn't
Pete
nobody
Wilson
going
Great
home.
Day.
So
Body
you-
for a body.
Exactly. So you got to the point to where you said, well, ain't nobody going home, so let me just continue doing what I'm doing.
I was comfortable.
Right,
I was
right.
comfortable doing what I do, but it's like I would always been I can't say lucky, but I've always given the opportunity to been around some great men that was incarcerated. So one of the great men that I run into in Tehachapi was a guy by the name of Jajaga Geronimo Pratt. He was my next door neighbor. And I remember I came to the day room that night, fresh off the bus. And I'm sitting there looking around. That's what you do, you scope out the scene. And he said, young man. He introduced himself, I introduced myself. And he said, you need to go to school. And I looked at him, I said, what? He said, you need to go to school. He said, you got a GED? I said, no, sir. He said, well, you need to get your GED, man. He said, you a Crip? I said, yes, sir. He said, where you from? I said, LA. He said, I got a son that's a Crip. And I tell him the same thing. So I'm telling you the same thing.
Right.
If I could talk to my son.
Right.
So I'm talking to you, get your education.
That's right.
And from his advice, I was able to start my education.
Right.
So along the way, I always had good brother steering me there.
Right,
But
right.
I also had the other brothers dragging me the other way. Because I was young and impressionable.
Right.
21, 22,
Exactly.
23.
Exactly. So you start programming in Solano. You start going to different programs
Yes.
and start seeing that, hey, wait a minute, what you got? I'm going home tomorrow. Wait a minute, what you got? Got found suitable. Hey, Joe got found suitable. Hey, might be me one day.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Coincidentally, there was a guy, this white guy, his name was Carr. That's my AKA. So this guy, he came off death row. He was in prison for killing an officer, and he got found suitable. And when I seen that, when I seen Mr. Carr got found suitable, I said to myself, I could do that.
Sure.
I could do that. And that's when I fully start blossoming into really internalizing what rehabilitation is about.
Now, doing your rehabilitation, because you fell into it yourself. You started doing it yourself. You started rehabilitating yourself.
Yes.
CDC don't do it.
No, CDC, no,
You do the
CDC.
work.
I started that process.
Right, you do the work.
Yeah.
Right, you do the transformation in prison yourself.
Yes.
What program did you take to start your transformation?
My first program was NA, Narcotics Anonymous.
Okay.
As a user of drugs and alcohol, I started going to NA. And I took NA very literal at first. It wasn't as serious. It was just, I was just going there to get out of the building,
Right.
just to be there drinking coffee. But as I kept going to those rooms and sitting with these guys hearing their story, which was, some of them stories horrific, other than mine. You know, because mine is a story that every guy like to look up to,
Right.
where I look down on it. But every guy's like to look up to it. So I hear these stories that horrific. It enabled me to have the courage to step out of my comfort zone and start talking about my personal issue, from childhood, from the street, to gang activity, and to using drugs and alcohol, and to really embrace the process of recovery.
Okay. So you attended these programs. You completed several programs because you had to jump through the hoops to come on.
Yeah.
Going in front of the Board of Prison.
Yes,
they didn't want one certificate. They
No.
wanted a bunch of them,
No.
and they want you to talk about them.
Yeah, so from NA, I started doing anger management. I started doing the victim impact, victim awareness. And the group that really got my attention was a group named Denial Management. Denial Management is where you understand your emotional drivers.
Okay.
Denial Management, it's believed that you are driven by fear, pain, shame, guilt, and anger. And because of these emotions, you use the drugs or you use violence to cover these emotions. And that's where the denial set in at.
Okay.
So I was able to get a hold of that and start saying, hey, I'm onto something there, because looking in retrospect, I see myself as an emotional individual living in the street at 14 years old. I've been in the street since I was 14. So it had to be a reason why I wasn't comfortable at home.
Right. Right.
So with denial management, I was able to look back into my life, right, and get a grip on myself.
Okay.
And that was big to me.
Okay. Okay. Now, how many times did you appear in front of the Board of Prison Terms?
I went to the 5th time, and this is my 6th time before I got found suitable. I got found suitable on my 6th time.
Okay. Now, the first time you went in front of the Board of Prison Terms, that was more or less a whooping to tell you what you needed to do.
Well, I didn't. Well, the first, no. I look at that different. The first time I went to the board, I didn't want to deal with them.
Okay.
To hell with you.
Okay.
Matter of fact, I'm not even going in.
Okay.
Send mines in the tank.
Was that at the time where they wasn't giving nobody dates?
It wasn't giving nobody dates, so I didn't see no reason for me to go up in there and a bunch of people tell me what to do, and they're not gonna let me out of prison. So I tell them, send my time to me in the tank, in the envelope, in the envelope, which is the holding tank.
Right.
And that's exactly what they did too. They sent me a 4-year denial on a piece of paper. They had no problem with it.
Right.
That was right up their alley.
Yeah.
And have a nice day.
That's what they did.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, that's definitely what they did.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So when you started going in,
Yeah.
what hearing was that?
When I started going in was 2007.
Okay.
Excuse me, 2006.
Okay.
When I started walking it.
Okay.
When I said I got to deal with my problem, because now Arnold Schwarzenegger was the governor, and he had signed a bill that dealing with rehabilitation. That's how CDC got the R.
Right.
You feel me? So once he did that, everybody was all geared up, said, well, you have to deal with rehabilitation. You got to take accountability for your crime. You got to take accountability for your action. And the state got to also be held accountable why they holding you so long in prison. So I decided to go in and test the water. And whoa, that was testing the water, because they was waiting on me.
Yeah.
They had a lot of questions that never got answered. And we had a talk.
Okay.
Yes.
So going into the Board of Prison Terms, you saw that they was more or less pushing buttons to what they wanted to see out of you, whether it was going or not, whether it was still there, or was it something that you was serious about?
Well, the process is started from the psych report.
Okay.
That's how the parole process started, and that's where the buttons are pushed.
Okay.
Because whatever the psych write, that's where the board going with it.
Exactly.
If the psych is ambiguous, meaning all over the place, the board is all over the place with you. But if the psych is precise and said this young man got insight, he got a relapse prevention plan, he knows his triggers, he knows his warning signs, he knows his causative factors, he knows his contributing factors, he knows all the things that brought him to prison and has created a plan to stay out of prison, then you're going to have a good hearing.
Okay.
But if the psych is talking about this young man he just started doing self-help, he don't have no understanding, he is blaming, he is rationalizing, he is not taking responsibility, then that's when the board dig off in you.
Right.
That's when you go to sparring with them.
Right.
That's when you find yourself having a combative hearing.
Right. And that's not gonna work.
That's not gonna work.
Not gonna work.
That's not gonna work. You're gonna get a lenti denial,
Okay.
what we call a lenti denial.
Okay. Now, when you doing your denials, they gave you a transcript like 90 days or 60 days after your hearing.
Yes.
Okay. You kind of like, let's do them aside.
Well, yes. Mine's, I put it in the cooler
Yeah.
because I didn't want to see me.
Right.
How I talk, how I elaborate, how I speak to these people, because that's how I used to see the board. I used to see the board as adversarial. I used to see them as the enemy.
Right.
And so once as the enemy, I don't want to read nothing about you. So like you said, I put it in a cooler, put it in a trunk, put it under the bed, and let it gather dust.
Right.
Yes.
Right. So you now in Solano, did they have any groups where they sit out and and go over the board of prison term with the mock board hearing that they had
Yes.
after that?
The guys got what you call mock board hearing, and you got certain group. Every group you go to is predominantly lifers. Personally speaking, I didn't like that because the population that I was in prison was young. So I'm always advocating to get these young men in the room because I see them as potential lifers. That's what I see them as. But every group that you go to is geared as a potential mock hearing. Because, for instance, if a guy is facilitating a group, he gonna say to you, when you go to the board gonna say, why is you angry? You see? So he just didn't say it, hey man, why is you angry? He used the board as a as a middleman. Instead of saying, man, why is you angry in life from the age 14? Not the board, if you go to the board gonna say, why are you angry? No, the man need to know why he's angry.
Exactly.
Off the top and work on it.
You need something to work with.
You need something to work with.
Yeah.
But every group in prison is a mock hearing for the board. I believe, personally speaking. That's my perspective, though.
Okay. Now, your sixth hearing,
Yes.
the sixth hearing that you went to, you got found suitable.
Yeah.
Okay. Now I can imagine how the hearing went. You go in that boardroom. That day that you went in the boardroom,
Yeah.
it was different.
It was different.
From any hearing that you went to, it was different.
It was real different walking in the door.
When you walked in, you knew something was wrong. What's going to happen here today? What's going on?
What's going on?
And you sit down, and they ask you, you here today on the hearing of whoever, and talk to us about it.
Well, I walk in that day, and this is the first time I walk in a boardroom where I knew 90% of the room. So my comfortability, my comfortable level came down.
Right.
Because I knew my lawyer, I hired her. I knew her for 10 years.
Who was your attorney?
Sabina Crosett from Oakland, California. So I knew her for a long time. I knew the DA. I knew the commissioner, Mr. Peck. Mr. Peck was working at Solano when I first got there.
Okay.
He was a captain on the yard.
Okay.
So we was coming. The two officers behind me, we worked. They knew my story.
Okay.
Because I used to walk around the prison yard tell everybody my story because I believe I was innocent. I believe I was innocent. So I always, every officer I get a chance to hear my story, I used to tell them. And this happened to be two of the guys that was sitting behind me. I was like, oh, well, it's just like I'm having a talk today.
Right.
So I sit down, we got swearing, and his first thing was, Mr. Peck, first thing was, he picked my psych report up. Like I elaborated earlier that everything started on the psych report. And this is the first time I got a low. Whenever you get a low, you on your way out the door. So he picked my psych report up and he said, we're not using this today. My heart dropped. I looked at him, but he said, however, we'll use it in deliberation.
Okay.
And that's when I said, okay, this is going to be good. Because if you're going to use my psych report in deliberation, and I know what's in that psych report, I know I'll be going on today. That's what I'm saying to myself, because the psych endorsed release.
Yes.
She endorsed release. So.
You remember what psych you had? That's okay.
Yeah, I remember in a minute.
Yeah.
So after he asked me, the first question was, what is the genesis? He used a very unique word that I've never heard before. He said, what is the genesis of your crime? And I look at him, and he said, you know what Genesis is? I said, yes, sir, the beginning, the foundation. He said, oh, you got an AA degree, you know what it is. So he was being facetious. He said, you got an AA degree, you know what Genesis is. I forgot. And the room laughed. They shared a joke. So I said, yes, sir, the beginning. And so I walk into the beginning of my life, where I came from. I was born in the islands, and in the Virgin Islands. I was raised up in Jamaica, and I came to the state at a very early age, Miami, Florida, spent some time with my moms, and I walk into my childhood, my whole childhood, that I never had no grown-up supervision. The door was open for me to do what I need to do, just be out of control. Whenever my mama can't control me, she send me to Florida. She send me to New York. When they can't control me in New York, I move to LA, and I just keep moving from place to place. So he got a feel of my childhood in transition. Then he said, tell me about the crime. So we start talking about the crime. And it was real easy for me to talk to him about the crime because I've started to talk about the crime already. Because I talk about the crime at the last board hearing. So I talk about the same thing. And it was real easy for me to talk because I wasn't there when the officer got killed. I was there when the robbery took place. But because of California got a murder rule,
That's right.
anything in commission of a crime,
That's
you
it,
get that. So that's where I was in prison.
Yeah.
So it was real easy for me to talk about that because I could tell him about the robbery, but I couldn't tell him about the murder. And that's where my dilemma with the board was.
Okay.
And so we talk about that. Then he talk about my rehabilitation. Let's talk about your rehabilitation. I have 28 RVR.
28?
RVR, 150.
Okay.
Yes. At my last board hearing, I was coming off a 7-year denial.
For one of the write-ups?
No, period. All the write-ups
Combined
is 28. And my last board hearing was 2010. And I did 7 years. I walked 7 years off.
Is that right?
Yes, before I came back to them. So I'm coming off a 7-year denial.
Stuff.
Yes. And I was, yes. But Allah blessed me to get found suitable at the end of the time.
Yeah.
You know, Allah is most knowledgeable.
Sure.
So Allah made.
There's a reason for everything.
I need that.
Reason for
everything.
Right.
So
we have some people. They look at things like man, why does that happen to me? Well, Allah, we plan, but Allah's the best of planners.
Best of plan.
Right? So we do things and we say it ain't time.
It ain't time.
When it's time, Allah open the door.
He opened the
But
door.
what we're gonna do now is we're gonna stop right now.
Yes.
Okay. Because see, this is good.
Yeah.
This is good. This is good. We're gonna go to the second part.
Yeah.
Because this got to be told about your transformation to who you
Yes.
are now.
Yes.
See, we went into who you were.
Yes.
So we're gonna go into the transformation of who you are now.
Yes.
And it's gonna get better. It's better with time.
Yes, sir.
You know.
Yes,
So
sir.
we wanted you to come back on the second part.
Yes, sir.
And we're gonna stop right now, and we're gonna come back on the second part. So we want you to look at the show on Channel 29 on Saturday night. Look at the show, and this brother just came home for doing 30 years in prison. He was sentenced for a crime that he didn't commit. He did the time, you know. But that's neither here or there. Okay. But we got a second part. We want you to come back in a couple of weeks and watch the second part. So tune in to Channel 29 on Saturday night at 7 o'clock. Look at the show and tell us what you think. Okay, so stay tuned.